A few medical terms, nothing conversational. Chen felt completely out of his depth. Why? Because we're going to walk in there and convince 50 Taliban fighters to surrender without firing a shot. Sparrow's confidence seemed impossible given the tactical situation. And we're going to do it by speaking their language, literally and figuratively. They approached the cave entrance with weapons lowered but ready, Sparrow leading with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested she'd done this before. The cave mouth was larger than it had appeared from the air, easily wide enough for vehicles, with fresh tire tracks indicating recent heavy use. "Sparrow, this is insane," Chen whispered. "There could be 50 armed fighters in there." "There are exactly 47 fighters in there, plus 12 civilians there using as human shields." Sparrow's matter-of-fact tone suggested access to intelligence that Chen couldn't fathom. "3 of the fighters are wounded, and their commander is someone I've been hunting for 8 months." As they entered the cave complex, Chen realized that Sparrow's intelligence was coming from sources far beyond standard military reconnaissance. The caves had been under surveillance by assets he couldn't see, monitored by people he would never know existed. The tunnel system was more extensive than expected, with multiple branches leading deeper into the mountain. But Sparrow moved with certainty, choosing turns without hesitation, as if she'd studied detailed maps of the complex. "How do you know where you're going?" Chen asked. "Because I've been planning this conversation for 6 months." Sparrow stopped at a junction where voices could be heard echoing from multiple directions. "Chen, when we go around this corner, I need you to do exactly what I say when I say it. No questions, no hesitation." "What if they shoot us on sight?" "They won't." Sparrow's certainty was absolute, "because I'm about to give them information that will save their lives." They rounded the corner into a larger chamber where Chen's worst fears were confirmed. 47 Taliban fighters were arranged in defensive positions throughout the space, weapons trained on the entrance they'd just used. In the center of the chamber, 12 Afghan civilians, men, women, and children, sat in terrified silence. The Taliban commander, a bearded man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and multiple scars, stepped forward with an AK-47. The medical helicopter appeared on radar at 8:47 hours, a single blip crossing the Afghan desert toward forward operating base Kestrel. Nothing unusual about that. Medevac flights were routine, especially during the height of summer operations when heat casualties spiked. The air traffic controller, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, barely glanced at his screen as he cleared the inbound aircraft for landing on Pad Charlie. But something was wrong. The helicopter's transponder identified it as Medevac 77, piloted by Captain Thorne, carrying critical blood supplies from Kandahar. Standard run. Except Captain Marcus Thorne had been grounded for 3 days with a shoulder injury sustained during a hard landing. Rodriguez knew this because he'd personally witnessed Thorne getting stitched up in the medical tent, cursing about missing his rotation. Rodriguez leaned forward, squinting at the radar signature. The aircraft was maintaining perfect approach vectors, textbook precision that spoke of thousands of flight hours. Whoever was flying that bird knew exactly what they were doing. His finger hovered over the radio transmit button, then stopped. The helicopter was already on final approach, rotors beating against the morning heat, dust plumes rising like ghosts across the landing zone. Through his tower window, Rodriguez watched the aircraft settle onto the pad with the kind of feather-light touch that separated exceptional pilots from merely competent ones. The engine spun down, and a figure emerged from the cockpit, slight build, confident stride, flight helmet tucked under one arm. Even from 200 meters away, Rodriguez could see this wasn't Thorne. The mystery pilot moved with purpose toward the medical bunker, a heavy equipment bag slung across one shoulder. Rodriguez reached for his secure phone, then hesitated. The aircraft's credentials were perfect, the mission legitimate, the timing appropriate. but in a theater where insurgents had previously attempted infiltration using captured uniforms and equipment. Every anomaly demanded investigation. Down on the pad, Chief Warrant Officer Kazimiera, Sparrow, Novik pulled off her flight gloves and surveyed the base perimeter. She'd been flying covert insertions for 6 months, her medical evacuation cover providing perfect camouflage for delivering far more than blood supplies. Today's cargo was different. Encrypted communications equipment that would revolutionize how forward units coordinated with Predator drone operations. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 years ago, she'd been washing out of fighter pilot training, told by her instructors that she lacked the aggressive instincts necessary for air-to-air combat. Now, she was flying the most sensitive missions in the theater, trusted with classified cargo that could shift the balance of asymmetric warfare. Her radio crackled. Medevac 77 Tower, please confirm pilot identification for our logs. Sparrow smiled grimly. The games were beginning. Tower, Medevac 77. Captain Thorne is temporarily reassigned. I'm Chief Warrant Officer Novik, flying under emergency medical authorization Alpha 77 Bravo. The lie rolled off her tongue with practiced ease. In truth, her authorization came from levels so classified that even the base commander wasn't fully briefed on her missions. Rodriguez frowned at his radio. The voice was clearly female, calm and professional, but something in the tone suggested steel beneath the courtesy. He glanced at his duty roster again, then at the medical helicopter now powered down on the pad. Protocol demanded he verify any crew changes through medical command, but the base's satellite uplink had been intermittent all morning due to a sandstorm north of Kabul. Copy that 7-7. Welcome to Kestrel. Medical is expecting your delivery. What Rodriguez didn't know was that Sparrow's real mission had been compromised 12 hours earlier. Taliban intelligence, fed by a corrupt Afghan National Army officer, had identified her as something more significant than a routine medical pilot. 3 insurgent cells were converging on FOB Kestrel, armed with shoulder-fired missiles and detailed knowledge of the base's defensive positions. Sparrow shouldered her equipment bag and walked toward the medical bunker, acutely aware of how exposed she was crossing the open ground. The desert sun was already brutal at 900 hours, heat shimmer distorting the mountains that ringed the valley. To any observer, she appeared to be just another pilot making a routine supply delivery. But her trained eye cataloged defensive positions, noted the decreased patrol activity, observed how the guard towers were undermanned. Inside the medical bunker, Navy Hospital Corpsman Petty Officer Blake Chen was inventorying blood supplies when Sparrow entered. Chen looked up from his clipboard, expecting to see the familiar face of Captain Thorne, and instead found himself staring at a compact woman with sharp green eyes and the kind of weathered confidence that came from flying in contested airspace. "You're not Thorne," Chen observed, not bothering to hide his suspicion. Thorne's grounded, shoulder injury. Sparrow set her bag on the metal examining table with a deliberate thud. "I'm Novik. Got your blood supplies and some additional medical equipment that requisitioned through Kandahar." Chen approached the bag cautiously. In 6 deployments, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and something about this situation felt wrong. The woman before him moved like infantry, not like the medical pilots he knew. Her flight suit was regulation, but the way she wore it suggested someone accustomed to carrying weapons. "What kind of additional equipment?" Chen asked, his hand drifting unconsciously toward the panic button mounted beneath the examination table. Sparrow's smile was cold as winter sky, the kind that's going to keep everyone on this base alive. Chen's finger found the panic button, but before he could press it, Sparrow's radio erupted with urgent chatter from the tower. All stations, we have multiple radar contacts approaching from the northeast. Fast movers, bearing 270, distance 15 kilometers and closing." Sparrow's demeanor shifted instantly from mysterious delivery pilot to combat veteran. She spun toward the bunker's small window, scanning the morning sky for telltale contrails. Chen, right. How many stingers does this base have operational? I'm medical personnel, I don't. How many? Sparrow's voice cut like a blade. She was already unzipping her equipment bag, revealing not medical supplies but sophisticated communications gear that Chen had never seen before. Maybe 6, 7 surface-to-air missiles, Chen stammered, suddenly understanding that whatever was happening transcended normal protocol. But they're locked in the armory, and Captain Morrison would never authorize. Morrison's dead. Sparrow's words hit the bunker like a physical blow. She was connecting cables between devices with the speed of someone who'd rehearsed this procedure under fire. Killed 20 minutes ago when his patrol hit an IED 8 kilometers north of here. The insurgents timed this perfectly. Chen felt the blood drain from his face. Morrison's patrol wasn't due back until 1400 hours. If they were already casualties, then someone had been feeding intelligence to the enemy with surgical precision. Outside, the base's emergency siren began wailing, a sound that turned every soldier's blood to ice water. Through the bunker's reinforced walls, they could hear running footsteps, shouted orders, and the mechanical whine of the base's automated defensive systems coming online. Sparrow's communications array crackled to life, displaying tactical data that made Chen's head spin. Aircraft positions, missile trajectories, friendly force dispositions, information that should have been restricted to the base commander and his senior staff. "Who are you?" Chen whispered. "Someone who's been expecting this attack for 3 weeks," Sparrow replied, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. "The question is whether you're going to help me save this base or stand there looking confused while 200 Marines get overrun." The communications display showed 8 aircraft approaching in formation, not the 3 or 4 that radar had initially detected. Sparrow's enhanced equipment was picking up stealth signatures that the base's conventional systems couldn't see. "Jesus Christ," Chen breathed, staring at the screen. "They're everywhere." Sparrow nodded grimly. Taliban acquired 6 Pakistani F-7 fighters last month through Iranian intermediaries. Tonight was supposed to be their grand debut, turning Fob Kestrel into a smoking crater as a demonstration of their new capabilities. "How do you know all this?" "Because I'm the one who's been tracking the deal for 6 months. Sparrow's fingers continued their deadly dance across the communications panel. "And because 3 days ago, we intercepted the attack orders." Chen's mind reeled. "Then why didn't you warn the base, evacuate, call in air support?" "Because this is the trap." Sparrow's voice carried the weight of decisions made in classified briefing rooms. "For 8 months, Taliban leadership has been planning spectacular attacks to coincide with the Afghan presidential elections. We let them think Kestrel was vulnerable, isolated, perfect for their demonstration." The communications display updated, showing friendly aircraft beginning to move into position 60 kilometers out. Chen recognized the signatures. FA-18 Super Hornets from the carrier strike group in the Arabian Sea, their radar profiles distinctive even to someone with limited tactical training. "So the entire base is bait," Chen said, the reality settling over him like cold stone. "The base doesn't know it, but yes." Sparrow's equipment was now coordinating between multiple satellite feeds, creating a 3-dimensional battlespace picture that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Kestrel's garrison thinks they're defending an isolated outpost. In reality, they're the anvil. In about 4 minutes, they're going to become the hammer. Outside, the sound of rotor blades filled the air as the base's Apache attack helicopters spun up for launch. Chen could hear Master Sergeant Williams barking orders to the ground crews, the familiar cadence of professionals preparing for combat. Sparrow's radio crackled with a new voice, crisp, authoritative, speaking in the clipped tones of a naval aviator. "Sparrow, this is Reaper 1-1. We have visual on the targets. 8 bandits in formation, bearing 265 Angels 12. They don't know we're here. Copy, Reaper 1-1. Execute on my mark. Sparrow's transformation was complete now. Gone was any pretense of being a medical pilot. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to coordinating complex military operations. Chen, I need you to get on the base intercom and tell everyone to take hard cover in exactly 90 seconds. I don't have authority to. You do now. Sparrow handed him a laminated card bearing the seal of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Emergency Authorization Tango 77. Read it. Chen's hands shook as he scanned the document. The authorization was signed by officials whose names he recognized from news broadcasts, granting temporary command authority to Chief Warrant Officer Kazimiera Novak for Operation Desert Sparrow. This is impossible, Chen muttered. You're a CW2. This kind of authorization would require. It would require someone who's been working deep cover for 18 months, building the intelligence network that made this operation possible. Sparrow's eyes never left her screens. Someone the enemy thinks is just another medical pilot, invisible and harmless. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The Taliban had dismissed her as insignificant, just as her flight instructors had 3 years earlier. 60 seconds, Chen. Sparrow's voice cut through his paralysis. Get on that intercom. Chen grabbed the base communication system, his training overriding his confusion. All personnel, take hard cover immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, take hard cover immediately. Across Fob Kestrel, Marines and soldiers dove for bunkers, fighting positions, and reinforced structures. The base transformed from a bustling outpost into what appeared to be an abandoned facility in less than 90 seconds, exactly as Sparrow had calculated. Her communications array showed the enemy aircraft closing to within 5 kilometers, their pilots no doubt puzzled by the sudden lack of defensive activity. Taliban intelligence had promised them a target-rich environment filled with exposed personnel and equipment. Instead, they found what looked like a ghost base. Reaper 1-1, this is Sparrow. Execute, execute, execute. The sky above the Afghan desert erupted into violence with the precision of a choreographed dance. 6 FA-18 Super Hornets, invisible to the enemy until seconds before engagement, fired a coordinated salvo of AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles from beyond visual range. The Taliban pilots, flying outdated Pakistani F-7s with minimal electronic countermeasures, had perhaps 10 seconds to realize their mistake. Chen watched the display in fascination and horror as 8 enemy aircraft became 6, then 4, then 2 in the span of 30 seconds. The remaining Taliban pilots, suddenly understanding they'd flown into a carefully prepared ambush, broke formation and attempted to flee toward the Pakistani border. Negative on the runner, Sparrow's voice was ice-cold professional. Reaper 2-2, you have the northern bandit. Reaper 3-1, take the southern. The last 2 enemy aircraft disappeared from the display within minutes, their pilots ejecting over empty desert where recovery by friendly forces was unlikely. But Sparrow's expression remained tense, her fingers never slowing on the communications panel. Chen realized that something was still wrong. The air attack was just the opening act, Sparrow said, anticipating his question. 3 Taliban ground units are converging on the base from different directions. 200 fighters, armed with mortars, RPGs, and detailed intelligence about our defensive positions. But we just won, Chen protested. The air threat is eliminated. The air threat was never the real danger. Sparrow's screens now showed ground-based radar contacts moving through the mountain passes that surrounded Fob Kestrel. The aircraft were supposed to suppress our defenses and create chaos. The ground assault was always intended to be the killing blow. Chen felt his stomach drop as he realized the tactical situation. The base's defensive positions were designed to repel small-scale probing attacks, not a coordinated assault by 200 fighters with inside knowledge of the facility's vulnerabilities. "How long until they reach the perimeter?" he asked. 12 minutes. Sparrow was already switching communication frequencies, coordinating with forces that Chen couldn't see on the displays. "But that's not our biggest problem. What's worse than 200 Taliban fighters with inside intelligence?" Sparrow's fingers paused for just a moment. "The inside intelligence comes from someone on this base, someone who's been feeding the enemy detailed information about our defensive positions, patrol schedules, and personnel assignments." The revelation hit Chen like a physical blow. A mole, someone among the 200 Marines and soldiers on Fob Kestrel, was actively working to get them all killed. "Who?" Chen whispered. "That's what we're about to find out." Sparrow's communications array was now displaying personnel files, cross-referencing communication logs with tactical movements over the past 6 weeks. The beauty of using this base as bait is that it forced our trader to make contact with enemy handlers. Every electronic communication, every suspicious movement, every piece of intelligence that found its way to Taliban commanders, it's all been monitored and recorded. Her screen flickered, then displayed a photograph that made Chen's blood run cold. Major Robert Sinclair, the base's executive officer, appeared in high resolution alongside intercepts of encrypted communications with known Taliban operatives. "Sinclair," Chen breathed, "but he's been here for 8 months. He knows everyone, has access to everything." Which is exactly what made him so valuable to the enemy. Sparrow was now coordinating between multiple radio frequencies, her voice switching between tactical call sends with practiced ease. "Blackwater 6, this is Sparrow. Target package is confirmed. Authorization Tango 77. Copy Sparrow, moving to secure the package now." Through the bunker's small window, Chen could see a team of Marines in full combat gear, moving purposefully toward the command bunker where Sinclair would be coordinating the base's defense. The irony was perfect. The traitor was probably at that moment directing defensive efforts against an attack he'd helped plan. Sparrow's radio crackled with updates from the perimeter guards. "Contact, contact. Multiple groups approaching from the northeast. Estimate 40 to 50 fighters moving through the ravine system." "Sparrow, this is Overwatch 2-7. I have eyes on additional movement from the west. Large group, maybe 70 individuals carrying heavy weapons." The pincer movement was developing exactly as enemy intelligence had planned, designed to exploit the base's defensive blind spots that only someone with intimate knowledge of Fob Kestrel could have provided. But Sparrow's trap was deeper than anyone had imagined. Her communications display showed friendly forces that had been prepositioned in the surrounding mountains, special operations units that had been infiltrating the area for weeks, waiting for exactly this moment. "Desert Wolf, this is Sparrow. Enemy elements are entering the kill zone. You have green light for immediate engagement." The mountains around Fob Kestrel erupted with the distinctive crack of high-powered rifles as sniper teams began engaging Taliban fighters who thought they were conducting a surprise assault. Simultaneously, indirect fire missions began impacting the enemy's rear formations, disrupting their coordinated advance. Chen watched the tactical display in amazement as the enemy's carefully planned assault dissolved into chaos within minutes. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked. 18 months. Sparrow's voice carried the weight of countless sleepless nights and impossible decisions. "Since the day I washed out of fighter pilot training, and they told me I'd never have the instincts for aerial combat." Her radio erupted with traffic as the trap continued to unfold. Special operations forces that had been invisible moments before were now coordinating complex maneuvers to envelope the enemy forces. The Taliban fighters, expecting to overwhelm an isolated outpost, instead found themselves caught in a carefully prepared killing field. But Chen noticed something troubling in Sparrow's expression, a tension that suggested the operation wasn't proceeding exactly according to plan. "Sparrow, this is Desert Wolf 6. We have a problem. Estimate 30 to 40 enemy fighters have broken contact and are moving toward your location. They're not following the expected routes." Sparrow's fingers flew across her keyboard, analyzing the tactical situation. "Chen, we need to move. Now." "What's happening?" Sinclair gave them more than defensive positions and patrol schedules. He told them about the medical bunker, about the communications equipment, about me. Sparrow was already disconnecting her gear, stuffing critical components into portable cases. "They know this is the nerve center of the operation." Outside, the sound of automatic weapons fire was getting closer. The distinctive crack of AK-47s mixed with the heavier reports of American M4 carbines, as the base's perimeter guards engaged infiltrators who had somehow penetrated the outer defensive ring. Chen grabbed his medical bag instinctively, then realized how inadequate it would be against the approaching threat. "Where can we go? The entire base is surrounded." "There's one place they won't expect us." Sparrow shouldered her equipment bag and moved toward the bunker's rear exit. "The helicopter." "Your medical bird. It's sitting in the open on the landing pad. Will be completely exposed." Sparrow's smile was predatory. "That's not a medical helicopter, Chen. It never was." They moved through the bunker's rear exit into the blazing Afghan sun, keeping low as rifle fire echoed from multiple directions around the base. The helicopter sat exactly where Sparrow had left it, rotor blades folded, appearing vulnerable and abandoned. But as they approached, Chen began to notice details that hadn't been visible from the tower. The aircraft's skin was darker than standard medical evacuation birds, with a subtle texture that seemed to absorb rather than reflect sunlight. The landing gear was heavier, reinforced for operations in contested environments. Most tellingly, the red cross markings that should have been prominent on a medical aircraft were barely visible, applied with paint that would disappear under certain lighting conditions. "What is this thing?" Chen asked as Sparrow began her pre-flight procedures with inhuman speed. "A 6M Little Bird, modified for special operations." Sparrow's hands moved across controls that definitely weren't standard medical equipment. Stealth coding, enhanced avionics, and enough firepower to level a small city. The aircraft's true nature became apparent as panels slid open to reveal rocket pods and a chin-mounted chain gun that had been completely invisible moments before. "Get in," Sparrow ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos of nearby gunfire. "We're about to give these bastards a lesson in why you don't mess with American airspace." Chen strapped himself into the gunner's seat, his medical training completely inadequate for the weapons systems surrounding him. Through the aircraft's armored glass, he could see Taliban fighters emerging from covered positions around the base perimeter, their confidence returning as they realized the American defenses were lighter than expected. Sparrow's pre-flight sequence took exactly 90 seconds, a testament to thousands of hours of training in hostile environments. The Little Bird's engines spun up with the distinctive whine of an aircraft designed for rapid insertion and extraction under fire. "Tower, this is Sparrow. I'm taking the bird up for close air support. Clear all friendly personnel from the northern perimeter." Rodriguez's voice crackled back, confused and strained. "Sparrow, negative. That's a medical bird. You're not authorized for combat operations." "Rodriguez, this is Authorization Tango 77. Check your emergency protocols and clear the goddamn airspace." The Little Bird lifted off with the kind of aggressive acceleration that pushed Chen back into his seat. Through the chaos of his first combat flight, he watched Sparrow transform once again, this time from covert intelligence operative to something far more dangerous. Her hands moved across the aircraft's weapons systems with the precision of a concert pianist. selecting targets from the tactical display while simultaneously coordinating with ground forces through multiple radio frequencies. Desert Wolf 6, this is Sparrow. I have eyes on the infiltration team approaching from bearing 045. 32 individuals with heavy weapons moving through the drainage ditch system. Copy. Sparrow cleared hot. Chen had never seen combat from the air before. The Taliban fighters below had been invisible from ground level, expertly using terrain and cover to approach the base undetected. From 200 feet altitude, their positions were obvious, their tactical movements predictable. Sparrow's first rocket salvo impacted with surgical precision, eliminating the enemy's heavy weapons team before they could bring mortars to bear on the base's defensive positions. The psychological effect was immediate and devastating. Fighters who had been advancing with confidence suddenly found themselves exposed to an aerial threat they hadn't expected. Chen, I need you on the radio. Frequency 247.75. Call sign Medical 7. I don't know how to coordinate air support, Chen protested. You're not coordinating air support. You're saving lives. Sparrow banked hard left, bringing her weapons to bear on another group of enemy fighters. Every Taliban fighter we eliminate up here is one that doesn't make it to the base perimeter where your Marines are dug in. The perspective shift was immediate and profound. Chen realized that Sparrow wasn't just conducting close air support. She was systematically dismantling the enemy's entire tactical plan, turning their coordinated assault into isolated groups of confused fighters scattered across impossible terrain. Her radio work was poetry in motion, simultaneously coordinating with ground forces, managing friendly aircraft in the area, and directing the broader battle that was unfolding across the entire valley. Reaper 1-1, this is Sparrow. I need you to establish a combat air patrol over Grid 77 Alpha. We have enemy reinforcements approaching from the north. Copy. Sparrow, moving to establish CAP now. Chen began to understand that the woman flying beside him wasn't just a pilot. She was the tactical coordinator for an operation involving hundreds of personnel across multiple countries. The medical helicopter was actually a mobile command post, equipped with communications gear that could reach from Afghanistan to the Pentagon. But even as the battle developed in their favor, Chen noticed something troubling in the tactical display. A large group of enemy fighters, perhaps 50 individuals, had disappeared from the sensors completely. Sparrow, where did the northern group go? Her expression darkened as she studied the display. They went underground. There's a cave complex about 2 kilometers north of here that intelligence missed during mission planning. Can we get them with rockets? Not without risking civilian casualties. Intelligence reports indicate the caves connect to a village where families are sheltering. Sparrow's voice carried the weight of impossible decisions. We're going to have to go in after them. Chen felt his stomach drop. Go in, this is a helicopter, not a tank. The little bird was designed for exactly this kind of mission. Sparrow was already changing course, flying low through mountain passes that seemed impossibly narrow for aircraft operations. Chen, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to do isn't standard tactics. It's not what they teach in flight school, but it's the only way to prevent those fighters from flanking our ground forces. The aircraft dropped into a valley so narrow that Chen could have reached out and touched the rock walls on either side. Sparrow was flying entirely on instruments now, navigating through terrain that would challenge an experienced mountain climber, let alone a helicopter pilot. There, Sparrow pointed ahead to where the valley opened into a small clearing. Cave entrance is about 50 meters from where we're going to land. Land, Chen's voice cracked. We're going to get out and fight them on foot. We're going to do something they'll never expect. Sparrow's smile was cold as winter wind. We're going to walk into their stronghold and offer them a choice, surrender or die. The little bird touched down in the clearing with feather-light precision, its rotor wash kicking up clouds of dust that provided concealment from potential enemy observers. Sparrow shut down the engines, and suddenly the valley was filled with the kind of silence that only exists in truly remote places. Chen could hear his own heartbeat as they prepared to leave the relative safety of the aircraft. Through the armored glass, the cave entrance looked like the mouth of some ancient predator, dark and threatening against the rocky mountainside. Sparrow checked her sidearm and shouldered a compact assault rifle that had been mounted beside her pilot's seat. "Chen, how's your Pashto?" "My what? Do you speak the local language?" A few medical terms, nothing conversational. Chen felt completely out of his depth. Why?